Fight fans, welcome to the PBC podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Buhari and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC podcast. I'm Kenneth Buhari.
I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thanks, as always, for tuning in. We appreciate it. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button wherever you found us if you haven't already. We're here to talk boxing, and one of the best young fighters in the game, Jaron Ennis, is going to be joining us this week. And speaking of young fighters, in today's toe-to-toe section, we're going to discuss when the time is right for an up-and-comer to step up and face the elite. So we're going to examine some examples of that from the past, and we'll also look at fighters today. So get ready for what should be a fun conversation. But first, let's get into some recent news, starting with the return of the Destroyer, Andy Ruiz Jr. Ruiz, the former unified world heavyweight champion, makes his long-awaited return to the ring versus veteran Chris Arreola in what promises to be a fun night of action on Fox Sports pay-per-view. The event is priced at $49.95, also features a damn good co-feature in Omar Figueroa taking on Abel Ramos. That should be explosive. And two rising stars stepping up, Sebastian Fundora against Jorge Cota and Jesus Ramos versus Javier Molina. But let's get back to the main event, Ruiz versus Arreola. It's been a while since we've seen Ruiz, Mike. What can we expect on fight night?
Well, you said it. It's a great matchup from a fan's perspective. You know, they're both offensive-minded guys who throw a lot of punches and can be hit. It's not going to be boring, that's for sure. I think it's also a good fight for both of them in terms of their careers. I think Ruiz has to show he's in decent shape, first of all, and get back into the win column after that debacle in the second fight with Anthony Joshua. And it's a good opportunity for Arreola, who can climb back into the title hunt with an upset. I'm going to pick Ruiz. I think he's the better guy, younger guy. But I think the fight might be more competitive than people think. Arreola finally learned the value of fitness for his last fight against Adam Kovnatsky. He threw this still boggles my mind. He threw a heavyweight record, 1,125 punches in that fight. And this guy's, how old is he? Pushing 40, and that fight was more competitive than I thought it would be. So the bottom line, Ruiz Arreola is an attractive heavyweight scrap.
Yeah, it's definitely fun. And I think obviously for Arreola, he'll be that much more motivating knowing this could be his last chance. But look, Ruiz is obviously the favorite here. Assuming he wins, who do you want to see him face next?
Well, I'm assuming for the sake of this discussion that Fury and Joshua are out of the picture for the entire year. They're supposed to fight each other twice, so I'm not going to include those two. So I think a fight with Deontay Wilder would be ideal for both guys. Okay. With a win over Wilder, Ruiz proves that the first fight with Joshua was no fluke, that he's one of the top heavyweights. I mean, I think he already is, but that sort of seals it. And for Wilder, a win over a guy who beat Joshua would be a significant step in the right direction for him, which is something that he needs. A really intriguing matchup.
Dang, man, you got my mouth watering just thinking about it. I love the Wilder matchup. I think it's great. Two guys seeking redemption, assuming one of them doesn't get a chance at a world title first. Now, in other news, last weekend, unbeaten welterweight Virgil Ortiz took a step up against Maurice Hooker, and he did his thing, stopping Hooker in 7 rounds. Mike, what was your take on Ortiz's performance?
I thought he looked good. He faced the biggest test in his career, and he passed it with a high grade. I would give him about a B+, I think. He did what he does. He walked down Hooker and beat him up in the end. He just methodically breaks you down. And I thought he was particularly good defensively. He either slipped or blocked a lot of Hooker's punches, I thought. One thing that surprised me was his inability to hurt Hooker with headshots, which he acknowledged afterward. Someone I was talking to suggested that it might be because he's a little predictable with his attack. Hooker knew the punches were coming, perhaps. Maybe Ortiz needs to disguise his punches a little bit better. On the other hand, I love the way he shifted his focus from the head to the body, which ultimately just destroyed Hooker.
Yeah, that was great. And I thought he looked good, but like you, I saw some flaws as well. But kid's only 22 years old, and there's still plenty of time, plenty of room for improvement. In fact, there's room for improvement for fighters 10 years older than him. Right. So Now, afterward, Ortiz called out WBO champion Terrence Crawford. That's a big step up from Maurice Hooker. Mike, is he ready for the welterweight elite?
Well, we're going to discuss this more later. But if I were advising him, I'd give him a little bit more seasoning. You know, you mentioned it. He's only 22 years old. There's no rush. You know me by now. I'm a little bit conservative. There's no reason to push these guys too quickly. Maybe he could work on being a little bit more versatile offensively. You know, a little less predictable, as I said earlier. I could be wrong though. He has a lot going for him right now. He might give anyone trouble, and I mean anyone. Again, though, I would ask, why not wait a little bit longer? The opportunities are going to be there for a guy like that as long as he keeps winning.
Yeah, and like you said, we'll discuss that and a whole lot more matchups during the toe-to-toe section. But it's time to bring in our guest this week. This guy is, without question, one of the best young fighters we've seen in a long, long time. I mean, his talent coupled with his work ethic is just that special. And on Saturday, April 10th, he's going to take a huge step up in class when he faces former world champion Sergey Lipinets in his first SHOWTIME Championship Boxing headliner. The man creeping on a come up at 147, Jaron Boots Ennis. Jaron, first things first, how has camp been so far?
Camp been going great. Everything been going smooth. You know, preparing for April 10th and getting ready to do my thing on April 10th.
Did the pandemic affect you at all in terms of getting prepared or getting sparring partners in?
I mean, yeah, it is kind of hard to get like sparring partners and stuff, but we got sparring partners and stuff now, so everything was going, like I said, going smooth, and we are preparing to do damage on the 10th.
Jaron, we saw that you go to church every week. Is that something that was installed in you as a child?
Yeah. My mom always put that in me. Put God first and our family first. God first and the family right after. So that's something that my mom put in me. So,
how important is your faith as far as your career goes and what you're trying to do? Does it play a central role?
Most definitely. You gotta have faith. Gotta have faith. Work hard, and when you do all that stuff, you'll be in the right position, and look where I'm at now. So just keep believing and keep achieving and keep working hard, and everything is going to fall right into place.
Well, where you are right now is SHOWTIME headliner, April 10th. Let's talk about your opponent, Sergey Lipinets. You said you want 2021 to be your year. This is a significant step up. How excited are you?
I'm very excited. Like I said before, I've been waiting for these type of fights for about 2-3 years, and I finally got the fight that I want, these guys that I want, and now y'all gonna see my real talent. Y'all gonna see me really do my thing and really see something special.
Have you watched tapes of him? What are your thoughts?
I don't watch tapes or nobody that I fight. I let my team and stuff do that. But I seen a few highlights and stuff from Instagram probably for like a couple years ago. But I mean, typical fighter, just comes straight forward, and his style is perfect for my style, and that's picture perfect for me for him walking forward like that.
Is there a reason why you don't watch tapes of the fighters? Because I know some fighters feel it's necessary, others don't. What's your take on that?
I mean, at the end of the day, you never know what the fighter gonna bring. One day he might come forward, and then with you, he might switch it up. He might do something different. So you gotta prepare yourself all the way around. And like I always said before, in the amateurs, you don't know who you fighting. You could fight 3 tall southpaws straight in a week. Straight back to back to back, and then you can fight 2 short people, and they orthodox. So I get that from the amateurs, I guess, because you never know who you gonna fight.
So against Lipinets, are you looking to get the victory, or are you looking to make a statement?
Most definitely, I'm looking to make a statement, and I will make a statement. I just can't wait. You guys are gonna see something very special.
Lipinets said he believes you see him only as a stepping stone. You know, the implication being you might be overlooking him. What reaction do you have to that?
Definitely not overlooking. Lipinets is a great fighter at 140. But like I said, this is my time. It's time for me to take over, and me punishing and stopping him will be that will push me to the next level. And after I do my thing on the field for him, that's gonna take me to the next level and get the type of fighters that I want and the big names and stuff like that.
You just mentioned 140. Do you think you'll have a size advantage against him?
At the end of the day, it's a welterweight weight class, and he's gonna weigh in at the same weight, 147 or under, and I'm doing the same thing. So.
Right.
Now, how far off do you feel you are from a world title shot?
I say maybe probably like one or two. I say two at the most. After April 10th, and I do my thing, and I put on a magnificent performance. I say probably maybe two more fights, maybe one more fight.
Okay.
It depends. It depends who want step up and take it.
Well, if you could choose, let's say if you could choose one fighter that you could face this year later in 2021, for instance, who would it be?
Anybody with a belt, and at the end of the day, that's the main goal: is to grab one belt and then collect the rest of them.
So is there one dream opponent or dream fight for you, in your opinion? No dream opponent, dream fight. I just want to be a world champion, and then, like I said, collect the rest of the belts and be an undisputed world champion at 147, and then kick my talents on up to 154 and do the same thing at 54. Virgil Ortiz, who stopped Maurice Hooker last Saturday. He's another rising welterweight. Did you see that fight? What were your thoughts on his performance?
No, I didn't. I actually didn't see the fight. I was, in the house chilling, and I was asleep by probably like 10 o'clock. So I didn't get to see the fight. So.
Jaron, a lot of people say you and Ortiz are the future of the division. What's your take on that?
Yeah, you can say that. Like I said, at the end of the day, I'm just worried about myself, and I know what I'm capable of, and I know I'm going to take over the welterweight division.
Do you see a showdown between you two in the future at some point?
Most definitely. Like I said, anywhere, anytime. All I gotta do is call.
Now, another young welterweight up and coming is Gary Antoine Russell. You two have a history going back to the amateurs. Can you tell us the story behind that? Because we've heard tidbits and so forth, but never really heard your side.
We fought in the Olympic trials. I won the first night. I fought him the first night. I beat him. Then I fought Tyree Irby on Tuesday. That Wednesday I fought Raheem Gonzalez. Then Thursday, Friday, I had a bye, so I sat Thursday and Friday, and I waited till everybody came out to losers bracket and stuff like that, and then I fought Gary Russell again. And they said that he won 3-2, but everybody know that I won. And a lot of people was telling me, and even the people when we got to the airport and stuff, the USA boxing people, they told me that he was already picked and to go to and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, it's just USA boxing, and they already be having any picks and stuff. So, but everybody really know, and they know too. So.
Now, I know that you are where you are right now. You're headlining on Showtime, but is there a part of you that wants to avenge what happened that night, maybe in the pros?
I mean, of course we can make that happen. But look where I'm at, and look where he at. And when he get up to where I'm at, definitely we can make it happen.
Jaron, in general, what do you think separates you from the other top welterweights?
What separates me is that I'm very versatile. I can do it all. I can box. I can bang. I can fight right-handed. I can fight left-handed. And at the end of the night, at the end of the day, they don't know what I'm gonna do. They don't know if I'm gonna walk forward. They don't know if I'm gonna box. So I have a mixture of everything, and it's hard for me to figure it out.
You're also a big welterweight. Are you still making weight comfortably?
Yes, I make weight very easy. I don't kill myself to make weight. I eat the day before weigh-ins and stuff like that. I be strong, so 147 is the perfect weight class for me.
Very good. So to summarize everything, what would you like to accomplish when all is said and done?
When all is said and done, I just want to go down in history as a legend, be a multi-unified division champion, and just and have my last name legacy at the top of the top with the best of the best, and that's the main goal, is to fight all the best fighters and be great and get about the game.
Well, we look forward to watching the ride. We know you're busy. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us.
No problem. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Jaron.
Thank you.
All right, it's time for Mike and I to go toe-to-toe, and this week's discussion is a timely one. In light of Jaron Ennis' big bout on April 10th and Virgil Ortiz's win last weekend, how can one tell when a young fighter should step up and face the elite? Now, this is the job of the matchmaker. Of course, Mike, there are some who think there's a clear-cut formula for determining when a young fighter is ready, but as we've seen in the past, that's not always the case.
Well, that's one of the most difficult questions to answer in boxing, I think. That's why the most stressful job in boxing is matchmaker. There's no question about it. These guys lose sleep, in the days and weeks leading up to fights. You don't want to pass up big opportunities, but you also don't want to put your guy in over his head, which could result in a disaster. It's a tough decision to make. Of course, once upon a time, it didn't matter as much because losses weren't frowned upon like they are now. A young fighter could lose to a more experienced guy, learn from it, and come back a month or two later. They fought more often and be a better fighter. Now, if you lose, particularly if you lose badly, it can be difficult to battle your way back. That's why these decisions by the matchmakers and the fighters and their handlers also, of course, are so crucial today.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Now, look, the reality is that hindsight is always 20/20. It's easy to second guess a matchmaker after the fact. So we're going to try to be as objective as possible during this exercise. And we're going to start with some young fighters in the past who stepped up and fell short. And we're going to offer our opinion on whether they were ready or not for that leap. Now, the first occurred in 2000. 22-year-old Fernando Vargas, undefeated, the IBF World 154-pound champion, took on Felix Tito Trinidad, the unbeaten two-division champion who held the WBA belt in that weight class at the time. It was a war from rounds 1 to 12, but Trinidad scored 5 knockdowns in total, including 3 in the final frame to knock Vargas out. It was a brutal finish for Vargas, a grueling fight for him, and there were questions about whether he ever really recovered from that fight. Mike, was Vargas ready to step up when he fought Trinidad?
Well, let me preface it really quick by saying I just want to make something clear to the listeners. The list of fights and the fighters that we're going to talk about later, it's not meant to be like a definitive list of young, hot young prospects or anything like that. We're only bringing these up to sort of illustrate our conversation. So to answer your question, I know this is often brought up as an example of a fighter who was thrown to the lions, so to speak. He hadn't even turned 23 yet. Yes, he was young, and yes, he probably could have benefited from a few more high-level fights. At the same time, he'd already beaten Yori Boy Campos, Raul Marquez, Winky Wright, and Ike Corte. He looked like a world beater in the Corte fight. He was an Olympian. He fought and beat those guys that I mentioned as a pro. He wasn't some undeveloped kid. He was already a good fighter with experience in big events. I lean towards saying that it wasn't too early. He was young, but he'd already accomplished quite a bit going into that fight.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think Vargas was ready. You mentioned the fights versus Wright, Corte, Campos, and Marcus and so forth. I just think Trinidad at 154 and 26 years old at the time, he was just in his prime and simply too good. Do I feel that the fight took something out of Vargas?
Oh, yeah.
I think it did. In his next bout, he was dropped by a significantly smaller guy in Wilfredo Rivera. Not just dropped, but out on his feet, I recall. Then after that fight, he fought Jose Flores in what was expected to be a soft touch. Flores was his former sparring partner, and he was hurt again. Now, Vargas came back to win both of those fights, but he just wasn't the same guy.
He was never the same.
Yeah. Then he lost to De La Hoya, obviously, Shea Mosley, and it was all downhill from there. I just don't think he had a choice but to face Tito, and that would have always been the outcome. Now, also in 2000, a young undefeated heavyweight by the name of Michael Grant took on the division king, Lennox Lewis. Grant was considered by quite a few people to be the man to take over the heavyweights. Instead, Lewis did a number on him, knocking him out in 2 rounds and completely destroying Grant's hard-hitting, fearsome persona. Grant, I don't believe, ever seriously threatened to become champion after that. Mike, was he ready?
Again, I get why people say it was too early for Grant because he was a late starter. I'm not sure when he started, but I know he started very late, and he was still developing. He had some experience against, heavyweight names that guys like Jorge Luis Gonzalez, Obed Sullivan, Lou Savarese. But it was a big, big leap to take on a guy like Lennox Lewis, obviously. The thing about Grant, though, is that he was never going to get much better than he was. He just started too late. So why not give him a shot at the big money? He was never going to be that good of a fighter anyway. So in this case, I just say, why not give it a shot?
Yeah, I mean, I think they could have developed Michael Grant a little bit more, especially after the way Andrew Galata dropped him in his fight right before. I thought that was a red flag, but in the heavyweight division, look, all you need is one punch, and Michael Grant had that. So I understand why they took the risk against Lennox, but in my opinion, they probably could have taken another fight or two to prep him. Ultimately, though, Mike, I'm with you. I don't think it would have mattered. Now, let's fast forward to September 2013, when a 23-year-old Canelo Alvarez took on a master in Floyd Mayweather. They called this fight the one, but they should have called it one-sided. Mayweather turned in a pristine performance, outclassing Canelo over 12 rounds. Mike, too soon?
Well, again, no, I don't think so. I thought Canelo's people had the right attitude going into that fight, at least the attitude I perceived them to have, which was that it was a no-lose situation. If he wins the fight, obviously it's great. If he loses, then you could say, well, I was young and it was a great learning experience against the best fighter of the era. And he knew he wasn't going to get knocked out or hurt badly. That could have been a disaster. Besides, while a more mature version of Canelo probably would have done a little bit better against Mayweather, he would never ever have beaten Mayweather under any circumstances. Just not a chance. So yes, I think it was okay for Canelo to take that fight when he did.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if Canelo, who wasn't a high volume puncher, would have ever been able to overcome Mayweather's skills. Plus, Floyd was 36, going on 37 at the time. There really wasn't much time left for him to face, for Canelo to face Mayweather. If you can't beat him at that point of his career, I don't know. I also think that the fight versus Floyd helped Canelo become the great fighter that he is today. He said it himself. He said he doesn't look at that fight as a loss, but a lesson. And that's sort of how I see it. There's no shame in taking a loss sometimes. And I think that's a perfect example. Now, the final example of past fights, 2017, 22-year-old Erickson Lubin stepping up against the then unbeaten WBC 154-pound world champion Jermell Charlo. Charlo blasted out Lubin with a single shot in the first round, a beautiful right hand. Mike, too much too soon?
Okay, so this is one I would say in retrospect, maybe it was too early for Lubin, who had just turned 22 before the fight. He had beaten some solid guys, but no one even near Charlo's level. He was obviously overwhelmed by Charlo, and maybe a little bit by the moment. Of course, it might yet work out okay for Lubin. He's won 5 consecutive fights against good opponents since then, and he's better than ever now, I think. So even a misstep like that can work out okay. But if I go back in time, I would say, hey, fight a guy in between the guys you were fighting in Charlo before you take on a guy like that.
Yeah, I agree again. I think it was too soon for Lubin, especially against an intense killer like Jermell Charlo, who was extremely motivated on that night by Lubin's trash talking and the hype surrounding Lubin. But look, it was Lubin who pushed for that fight. And after watching Lubin knock out Jorge Cota in 4 rounds, I thought it might be a war. As you mentioned, Lubin now is back on track, and Charlo's still the division king. So who knows? Maybe one day we'll see a rematch. All right, let's take a look at some fighters today who are on the cusp. We'll start with Sebastian Fundora, undefeated 23-year-old super welterweight. He'll be taking another step up in class May 1st, Fox Sports pay-per-view against Jorge Cota. Is Fundora ready to step up and face the elite?
Okay, so my conservative instincts are going to come through, I think, from this point on in the discussion. I would wait for him. He drew with Jamonte Clark recently. He's only 23 years old. He's only had 17 fights. I wouldn't wait that long, but I would wait. He has a lot of potential. He's just a fascinating fighter, both his size and how he fights and his results and all that kind of thing. I still can't believe he's Anthony Joshua's height at 154 pounds. He should just take advantage of that size while he can, and I think he will. But 1 or 2 or 3 steps before he actually takes on a top guy.
Yeah, I think he's a couple fights away from challenging those top guys. I'd like to see him continue at this pace. I think you pretty much covered what I had to say. Now, the next person on our list is unbeaten welterweight Jaron Boots Ennis, who we just spoke to. Ennis, only 23 years old. He'll be taking a pretty big step up versus former world champion Sergey Lipinets Saturday, April 10th on Showtime. Mike, is Boots ready?
Okay, so Ennis is different for me. I want to read something Mikey Garcia told me directly when I asked him about Virgil Ortiz for a story I was working on. Mikey said, quote, "Look, when you're young and you have the tools, experience isn't quite as important sometimes. This is Mikey talking, when I fought Orlando Salido, he was the man at featherweight. He'd already fought the best fighters of that generation in that division. I was an up-and-coming young fighter, 25 years old, but I had the skills. And when you have the skills, when you have the tools, experience isn't as big a factor as people think." I think that what Mikey said definitely applies to Ennis. Yes, he would be at a disadvantage to some guys in terms of experience, but he's so good that I'm not sure it would matter. I think he can compete with anybody right now. Of course, let's see how he looks against Lipinets. That's a legitimate test. We'll see. We'll see what my commentary looks like after that fight. I remember, if you'll allow me another minute, I remember when I covered Oscar De La Hoya early in his career. I thought so-and-so opponent would give him trouble because he has more experience or he's just really a tough guy. And then De La Hoya would just destroy that person. He was just so much better than everybody else coming up. That's what I learned. That's what I learned at that time. That special talent is usually more important than anything else. So to answer your question, I'm not sure Ennis would beat the top guys, but I wouldn't be the slightest bit surprised. I think he's ready.
Yeah, and I think what Mikey Garcia said is really salient. One thing that should be noted is that Garcia was, basically born and raised in a gym, and so was Jaron Ennis. Look, if you ask me if Ennis is ready, I'd like to see his chin tested. I'm hoping Lipinets, who's a pretty hard hitter, can test that beard. I also think that how Ennis performs against Lipinets will tell us if he's ready. If he makes a statement versus Lipinets, looks spectacular, maybe even stops him, then I believe Boots is ready because he's just been toying with his opposition. His talent level and his skill, it's just out of this world. But if there are some struggles, maybe they should scale it back a bit and continue to move him at the incremental pace he's been on. Now, the other name that's been mentioned as a future 147-pound king, we mentioned him a little earlier, is 22-year-old Virgil Ortiz Jr. We saw Ortiz dismantle Maurice Hooker last Saturday, stopped him in 7 rounds, although it appeared Hooker suffered some sort of injury which caused him to take a knee. Mike, is Virgil ready for the top 147-pounders?
I think Hooker might have been fortunate to have suffered the injury because it looked like he was getting beat up there at the end. Ironically, I'm not sure Mikey is right about Ortiz, at least not 100% right. He told me that before this last fight. So to be fair, as I said, it looks to me like he can still work on some things. I think he would agree with that. I know he would agree with that. Yes, he has special talent. This is a special kid. He has special talent. But even that has to be honed to some degree. Still very young, still developing. He might give anybody problems right now, but again, I'll keep asking this question: why rush? Just take 2 or 3 more fights, let him work on some stuff, and then he'll be just a monster.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think he's still a couple fights away. I'd put him in with a David Alvanesian or maybe a matchup versus Rashidi Ellis. But at this point, I'd keep him away from the top 147-pounders, although you got to admire his guts. Calling out Terrence Bud Crawford, I think we need to see more of that in boxing. Now, in the co-feature of the Ennis Lipinets headliner on Showtime April 10th, another undefeated welterweight, 26-year-old Imanta Stanionis faces Thomas Dulorme. Pretty big step-up fight for Stanionis, Mike. Is he ready for Dulorme, let alone the division elite?
Well, we're gonna find out, aren't we? Because he's got that's his big test on April 10th. He's like Ortiz or Artur Beterbiev in a way. I think he's sort of machine-like. Maybe he could have a more diverse offense. I don't know. That's why an opponent like Dulorme is just, I think it's perfect for Stanionis. He's definitely a tough test, but not a crazy test. Like, you don't jump all the way to the top. Putting Stanionis in with a Spence or a Crawford right now would be too soon for him.
Yeah, I see a lot of veteran traits in Stanionis. He's extremely polished. I like the Beterbiev comparison. And he has a lot of skills depending on what's in front of him. But I think, like Ennis, how he performs in this step-up bout will determine whether or not he's really ready for the division elite. However, even if he KOs Dulorme in 5 rounds, I would still move him carefully. Maybe it's time for a lower top 10, top 15 guy after that. Then you go into the upper crust. Man, just thinking about these guys, developing gets my juices flowing. Now, closing out the 147-pounders, we've got the youngest of them all, 20-year-old Jesus Ramos. Ramos takes another step up in class when he faces Javier Molina on the May 1st Ruiz Areola Fox Sports pay-per-view. Is he ready for a world title shot?
Ramos is the perfect example, I think, of a fighter that you don't rush because of his age. He just turned 20. I love what I see. He can box. He has a lot of poise, especially for his age. He definitely has punching power. He has just so much going for him. At his age, though, take it slowly. Don't push him too hard, and he'll blossom before your eyes. Putting him in with a top 147-pounder right now would be a big mistake. That could stunt his growth, and I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think he's a year away at the earliest. I don't think he needs to be rushed. You continue to step him up, develop him, get him someone who can extend him a bit, because right now he's just blasting through everyone. And once you get that, then you see what you have. I think Ramos is on the right track. No need to hit the accelerator just yet. Now, one guy who wants to break the speed limit is 22-year-old Ryan Garcia. It's the undefeated lightweight. He fought Luke Campbell in his last fight. Nice step up for Garcia. He got dropped by Campbell, but he came back to stop him. Since then, he's been calling out Gervonta Tank Davis, says he's willing to fight anyone. Is Ryan Garcia ready?
This is the toughest one for me. It's kind of hard to say that he's not ready, because I think a lot of Luke Campbell. I don't think Luke Campbell's at the Gervonta Davis level, but I think Luke Campbell is a solid, seasoned guy, Olympic champion, and we saw what happened with him. Garcia went down. That was maybe a learning experience, but look what he did when he got up. I think you have to say he's ready. But if I were close to Ryan Garcia and you're talking about him fighting Gervonta Davis, I'd be nervous, really nervous. But maybe that's how you're supposed to be in big fights. I don't know. I think I would give him. I think I'd still give him a couple more fights before I fought a guy like that. I really would. He's hot though now. I mean, in terms of the marketing side of things, really hot. He can make a lot of money. So they're going to be tempted, I think, to give him a big fight. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with him.
Yeah, I think that he has some flaws that may improve over time, but his talent, his physical gifts are so tantalizing that he may be able to overcome them now. I think Garcia is special and is one of those guys that could surprise early. However, I'm with you. It's probably best he continue to work with his trainer, Eddie Reynoso, and hone his craft. Then again, he's a big 135-pounder, way too long, and he may be in another division instead of the big money fights at lightweight, but put him in too early and you may never see another big money fight, period. So I hope that he can continue to develop before he steps in with the big boys. But hey, you never know. The flashes make you think he looks ready at times. Now, there's another lightweight who's also 22 and undefeated, WBC titleist Devin Haney. We saw Haney go 12 with former champion Yuriokis Gamboa in his last bout. Is Haney ready for the big boys?
I think Haney's ready in terms of his ability, his skill set. But he's another guy where I'm not 100% sure. It's sort of like a we're going to see kind of situation with him. It's almost like everybody assumes that he's ready, that he could face anybody in the division, but he's very young. He doesn't have a lot of experience at the highest level. So I really don't know with him. I guess he might be the kind of guy that I was discussing earlier, a kind of guy with special skills, special ability, who maybe doesn't need a high level of experience to succeed. I kind of have a feeling that's who he is, but it's still a wait and see. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out.
Yeah, for sure. I think Haney needs some more time to develop. He's slated to fight Jorge Linares next, which is, an intriguing scrap. Linares is a bit chinny, but Haney isn't exactly Tank Davis, so maybe it's interesting. I just hope he's tested. I really want to see him or Ryan Garcia versus Javier Fortuna. That would be a great test for the young lightweights, in my opinion. Now, the last name on our list is also undefeated, the interim WBA 130-pound champion, Chris Primetime Colbert. Colbert still only 24, but he looked like a beast versus Jaime Arboleda last year. Is Colbert ready for the elite?
Colbert's another guy that reminds me of Ennis, or is sort of in that class. I think that his talent level is just through the roof. I think that's going to compensate for a lot. He might be able to give anybody problems, but I'm going to go back to my mantra of why rush. Maybe one or two more fights and he's ready, but man, he's so talented.
Yeah.
He's so talented. He might be able to beat anybody right this minute.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think he is ready. He quietly, took a step up against Jezreel Corrales, and it was one-sided. And then Arboleda was supposed to test him, and although it was a fun fight, he basically blew right through him. I think Colbert just has skills well beyond his years. Now, if I were the matchmaker, I'd step him up in his next fight, maybe against a Xavier Martinez or an Andrew Cancio, not quite a Tank Davis. Take it from there, but make no mistake about it, Chris Colbert definitely looks like he's ready for prime time. All right, that's going to do it for this week's show. As a reminder, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button wherever you found the PBC podcast. We want to thank Jaron Boots Ennis for stopping by, and we want to thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week for more boxing talk, more interviews right here on the PBC podcast.